Hello and welcome to this video where we will show you step by step how to create a really good thesis proposal for your master or bachelor thesis project. We will focus on two main topics. First, what exactly is a thesis proposal and why does it play such a crucial role? Second, what elements make a good proposal and how should it be structured? Please note that you can download the template for the thesis proposal directly under this video and that you can use it whether you choose a predefined topic from a professor, a topic in collaboration with a company, or a personal topic. So what is a thesis proposal and why is it so important? A thesis proposal is a document of about 1 to 3 pages that describes what the goal of your thesis is and how you intend to achieve this goal. In a thesis proposal, you outline your research goal and question, the proposed methodology, and the relevance of your topic. The proposal therefore serves as a guide for your entire thesis and usually must be approved by a supervisor before you can start with your bachelor or master thesis project. It is therefore comparable to an investor pitch, which briefly describes what goal you have and how you intend to get there. At this point, you might think that you do not need to write a proposal for a predefined topic from a professor because the topic is already defined. However, this notion is wrong, as most advertised topics are very general and only set the general thematic guidelines. In 99.9% of all cases, it is necessary that you concretize the given topic with your supervisor and align it with your personal interests. By the way, it makes an extremely good impression on a professor if you apply for an advertised topic with your 2-page thesis proposal that roughly documents how you would approach the advertised topic. This signals to the supervisor not only that you are a very proactive personality, but also shows that you are really interested in the respective topic. But what does a good thesis proposal for a bachelor's or master thesis look like in concrete terms? Well, as so often in life, there's not just one single way to reach the goal. The thesis proposal that we will introduce to you in this video has proven to be very successful in the past and has 10 main components which we will present and explain step by step. Another important note before we start: the thesis proposal is to be understood as an ideal typical template. As you will see in the next video, you can apply this template one-to-one, or alternatively, you can omit certain elements depending on which aspects are particularly relevant for your topic. The overarching goal of the proposal must just always be to give your potential supervisor a clear and good overview of your planned thesis project. Let us now go through the individual components of the proposal one by one. First, we recommend that you define an appealing title for your thesis project. This is an important step as a good title is like the shop window of a store. It should be appealing enough to attract the attention of your supervisor and clear enough to show him or her what to expect from your thesis. When formulating the title, you should pay particular attention to the following 3 things. First, address a clear readership in the title. Second, indicate the benefits of the content for your readership. Third, contextualize your work as precisely as possible. An example of a good title can be seen here on the right side: Liquidity Management in Seasonal Winter Sports Tourism, an analysis of strategic approaches and best practices for financial managers. Why is this a good title? 3 reasons. First, the title addresses a very clear readership, namely financial managers. Second, the title shows a very clear benefit for the readership, namely an analysis and overview of best practices in liquidity management. Third, the title precisely specifies the context, namely liquidity management in seasonal winter sports tourism. In contrast, on the left side, you find the bad version of the title: Financial Considerations in the Context of Winter Sports, a Holistic Analysis. The title might actually still sound good, but it is a very bad example because A. It does not address a clear target group, B. Does not show a clear benefit, and C. Does not provide contextualization. The titles here on this slide are all from the Harvard Business Review and symbolically show you once again the importance of a good title. Read these titles carefully, such as How to Recover from Failure, What Makes a Great Leader. These are all titles that address a very clear readership, promise a clear benefit, and provide adequate contextualization. Let us now delve into the first content component of the proposal, the research problem and the actual motivation for your thesis. In this important section of your proposal, you must describe the research problem that you want to address in your work. A research problem is simply said a problem that a specific group of people has and that has not yet been resolved or only insufficiently solved and answered. An example of a current research problem in the business context is the effects of home office work on employee productivity, about which little has been researched to date and about which many contradictory opinions exist. At the same time, there are many executives who would like to have clear answers and recommendations for action on this issue. From this example, you can see that the research problem represents the actual basic motivation for your work, namely to make a small contribution to solving a socially relevant problem. Regardless of which research problem you choose, we would recommend that you consider the following 3 points. First, focus on a problem that a very specific group of people has. In the example of the effects of home office work on employee productivity, this would include, among others, executives who have to manage teams working from home. Second, emphasize the benefit for the people if the addressed problem is solved, or show the cost for the people if the problem is not resolved. In the example of the effects of home office work on employee productivity, you could, for example, highlight with figures how much money companies lose annually due to the reduced productivity. Third, and this is a bonus tip, represent the research problem visually with the help of a sketch or a small framework. Because you know yourself, a picture says more than 1,000 words. A concrete example of how you can briefly and concisely formulate the research problem is shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here and read the example at your own pace. After you have formulated the research problem and the motivation for your thesis, it is advisable in a second step to articulate the research goal, and if you can already do so, also the research question that underlies your thesis. This section is about describing what the specific goal of your thesis is and what research question you want to answer specifically. In other words, what do you want to understand better or find out with your work? Of course, you should refer in this section to the first section where you explained the actual research problem. Staying with the example of the effects of home office work on employee productivity, you could explain here, for example, that in your thesis you investigate how the increasing home office work affects the productivity or job satisfaction of employees. Also note that we deliberately speak more of a research goal than a research question, because most students cannot formulate the research question with absolute clarity at this early stage of the thesis project. And it is important for you to understand that this is absolutely normal. Even professors usually cannot articulate the actual research question clearly at the beginning of a new research project. The reason lies simply in the fact that at the beginning of every research project, one knows little about the actual topic and only begins to understand the actual details and connections of the respective topic during the research process. As already explained in Module 1, this is why we have the following saying in academia: you don't find your research question finds you. A concrete example of how you can concisely formulate the research goal is shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here and read the example at your own pace. After you have sketched the research problem and the research goal, it is advisable in the next step to consider exactly what the practical relevance of your planned bachelor or master thesis is. Specifically, in this section, you must answer the question of how and to what extent your proposed work benefits a specific group of people in practice, such as financial managers. It is very important for you to understand that one must justify and describe the practical relevance of research projects not only in a bachelor or master thesis, but actually in every scientific publication. Especially because many research projects are financed with public funds, the point of practical relevance is of central importance. After all, academia is not there for its own sake, but aims to serve the general population and society with new and valuable knowledge. When formulating this section on practical relevance, Also consider the following 3 points. First, your work can benefit not just one, but several groups of people in practice. Second, practitioners benefit greatly when they gain insights that help them solve their specific problems. Third, practitioners, unlike scientists, are usually less interested in understanding a problem precisely. To bring a striking example, if someone has hair loss, the greatest benefit for them is if you can help them stop their hair loss. The underlying biochemical and biological processes of hair loss and the question of why hair loss can be stopped are secondary for them and usually of less interest. What matters to them is whether you can solve their problem or not. A concrete example of how you can briefly and concisely formulate the practical relevance of your thesis is shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here and read the example at your own pace. After you have defined the practical relevance of your planned bachelor or master thesis, we recommend that you also justify the theoretical relevance of your thesis in a next step. Comparable to the section on practical relevance, in this section you must answer the question of how and to what extent your proposed thesis benefits a specific group of people in science, such as marketing or finance professors. When formulating this section, consider the following 3 points. First, focus on explaining how your thesis expands the current understanding of the research problem outlined in section 1. For example, one simple way to achieve this goal is to investigate the connection discussed in science, such as the effects of home office work on employee productivity within a new sample. Second, we recommend citing current scientific literature to show your supervisor that your research problem is discussed in the literature but has not yet been sufficiently researched. Third, it is important to realize that solving a problem is usually secondary for academics. To come back to the striking example of hair loss, for example, the greatest benefit for a biology professor is if you can help them better understand the problem of hair loss and the underlying biochemical and biological processes. In other words, scientists primarily strive to gain a better understanding of a problem, not to solve it like practitioners. A concrete example of how you can concisely formulate the theoretical relevance section of your thesis is shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here and read the example at your own pace. After you have defined what you want to investigate and why it is relevant, we recommend that you next sketch the intended research design. In other words, to explain how you intend to achieve your research goal. As already mentioned, the research design forms the heart of every bachelor or master thesis. The research design is indeed so important that we devote an entire module to it in our e-learning course, namely Module 3. If you feel unsure about the research design, we strongly recommend that you take a look at Module 3. For the moment, and especially with regard to the thesis proposal, you should remember the following 2 points. First, we recommend that you look for a so-called role model paper, in which your planned research design has already been successfully applied in a similar or comparable context. This offers enormous advantages for you. For example, it saves you a lot of methodological decisions and allows you to orient yourself towards a proven design that is accepted in the international scientific community. Second, we advise you to focus this section particularly on justifying your method for data collection and data analysis. A concrete example of how you can concisely formulate the planned research design of your work is shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here and read the example at your own pace. Every bachelor or master thesis, as well as every publication written by a professor, has limitations. There is no work without limitations. Therefore, we advise you to describe the limitations of your thesis in the proposal so you can discuss them with your supervisor. When formulating the limitations of your work, especially consider the following 3 points. First, we would recommend mentioning both content-related and methodological limitations. Second, it is important to be aware that this is not about speaking poorly of your work, but about showing your supervisor that you are a reflective person and are aware of the limitations of your work. Third, you should definitely use the first meeting with your supervisor to discuss how the limitations you see in your work can be mitigated or perhaps even eliminated. A concrete example of how you can concisely formulate the limitations of your work without making your planned work look too bad is shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here and read the example at your own pace. Next, we recommend that you consider what interesting key findings your thesis could reveal and document these in writing. It is very important to think about this at an early stage because in the end, every scientific work, even if it's between 30 and 50 pages long, usually results in only one or two core statements that define the actual story of the whole thesis. As you may have also noticed, the best journal publications rarely have more than one or two core statements to convey to the readership. It makes absolutely sense, therefore, to adhere to this implicit rule and strive to ensure that your thesis conveys a central message at its core. When formulating the expected results, especially consider the following 3 points. First, if you can already show your supervisor preliminary insights, do it. Good sources for preliminary insights are, for example, conversations with subject matter experts or even initial analyses that you have generated based on easily accessible data in Excel or a comparable statistics program. Second, it is important to understand that you are not expected to predict the future. Rather, this section is about communicating your expectations and assumptions to your supervisor in order to jointly evaluate the attractiveness of your thesis project. Third, it can be very helpful for you to think in scenarios and consider what various possible results of your work could be and how they would affect your core message. A concrete example of how you can concisely formulate the expected result of your thesis is shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here and read the example at your own pace. The timeline section of the proposal should be self-explanatory. Briefly describe when you plan to submit your thesis and also explain when and to what extent you will work on your thesis. This gives your supervisor a good orientation on when you will need supervision capacity. Of course, you can also draw a Gantt chart and list in detail what you plan to do and when. However, in this early phase of your thesis project, this is usually not necessary in most cases. The section Open Questions is again very important for you because you should definitely note down which questions you want to discuss with your supervisor at the very first meeting. Listing your open questions is a strategically very sensible move. Such questions not only show the supervisor that you are a motivated student, but they also signal very clearly that you value the supervisor's time and do not want to waste it. Similar to the section on limitations, it makes sense to divide your questions, for example, into content-related and methodological questions. Also note that there are basically no stupid questions and you should not be afraid of looking silly just because you ask something that might seem obvious. However, questions that Google or ChatGPT can answer within a second, of course, should not be asked. Selected questions that are particularly suitable for the first meeting with your supervisor are shown on this slide. If you like, you can pause here again and read the example questions at your own pace. Pay particular attention to the fact that many questions about the current state of the literature are listed here. These questions are particularly suitable because you can never achieve the understanding of the current state of the literature in your short processing time as your professor can. Therefore, it is strategically absolutely sensible to try to find out in the first meeting how your supervisor assesses the current state of the literature and which research gaps or research problems he or she considers particularly worthwhile. Finally, it may well make sense to create the first outline of your thesis. After all, some professors explicitly require this from you. As already discussed in Module 1, the structure of your thesis can change significantly during the project as you continuously gain new insights about your topic. Therefore, it is important to consider the following 3 points. First, it is essential to understand that the structure of your thesis depends directly on your chosen research design. Second, and as a direct consequence, you should orient yourself towards a role model paper when structuring your work and use a proven structure as the basis for your thesis structure. Third, you should consider the structure of your thesis to be rather flexible at the beginning. Adjustments and changes during the writing process are not only permissible but often necessary. Finally, it should be mentioned here that you should cite the sources used in the proposal itself and/or list the sources that you have otherwise read. So that was a quick theoretical run-through of the structure of a good proposal for your bachelor or master thesis. In the next video, we will show you concrete examples of former students who have written and submitted good proposals.